Greetings. My name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video. Out to you because you're watching. Thank you. And it's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates and the Core New Core and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor, whatever that may be. So Mondays are killers because I always seem to end up with so many notes. Let's just show a visual here. Look at that. That's a postcard I got from my travels. And the position of the head and the chest, right, where the head is on the body and the position of the body, all I can see is core new tension. Because that tension, that elongation of the body has to be there to be in that kind of posture, to be moving through space like that. All right, so one more time. Beautiful, huh? Out of 6, number 1. Very pragmatic in a way, and just an observation that's titled this way. It's titled Flowers, Saw, Flowers. And line 2 of the same title is Round, Flat, Round. And I think if I were to say that again, I would put in the spacing of timing like this. Flowers, saw, and then saw flowers. You know what I'm talking about at all? And then round, flat, and after that, flat, round. Okay? So what's similar to me in characteristic is that the same thing is done right after each other with the different thing done as on the outside. So let me explain. In side splits, when you're together in side splits and you're ready to move around in your upper body, the first thing to do is, in plane, in keeping with Joe's original pattern and the ideal of the midline first, you go down and you pick flowers, right? And then if you can do that, you then evolve to being able to do the saw. So it's in pattern with the mat, right? But then when you come off of that side of side splits and turn around and do side splits from the other side, for me it ends like it would if it were side splits and then front splits, insofar as side splits don't come before front splits in terms of defining the plane you're moving in. And so you're going from side splits, bringing the body back into front splits, the primary axis of control. And so in that regard, on side splits, going from flowers in plane to saw, making rotation, is the normal progression. But then when you're doing the same thing facing the other way, I like to do the saw, so it's a continuation of where you just left off, facing the other way, and bringing it back into flowers to finish, just like you do front splits after side splits. Number 2, reading between the lines. So reading between the lines. Now remember, this is, I share this with you to help you have a point of view relative to what I'm sharing. in any of it. And to avoid, just to make it a quote, without saying who or where or how or why, I read these words when it says, standing on your head has jack shit to do about your core. It is about the alignment of your cervical and thoracic alignment, i.e. body alignment, and other variables. So how do you read between the lines on that? And having an MMP point of view, how can you both what? Part of what's read there, when it starts out, standing on your head has jack shit to do about your core, seems to me to be an emotional attitude toward whatever the word core is. And you and I and a few others know that within MMP, meaning the point of view of Michael Miller-Pilates, the core is literally a physical grip at the hip. It's controlling a rotational dynamic at the hips. That's the core. And I don't think the writer of these words has any awareness of that or judgment of that, more just a frustration with the ubiquity of the word core and how it's not as ascribable to standing on your head as the alignment of your cervical and thoracic spines, which is like your neck and your chest. As though your lumbar, okay. I.e., namely, resulting in this focus on body alignment, right? And anybody that's hip to MMP is really aware of alignment and really aware from the MMP point of view how the body engages in core new tension to achieve alignment and the benefits from that. Namely what? Uniform usage, right? In order to be conditioning uniformly. And other variables. See, I identify with what seems to be some kind of condemnation with the word core, and I really don't think that there's any awareness at all about the MMP point of view about what the core is. And then goes on to talk more about it's the alignment in your cervical and thoracic spine, i.e. your body alignment. I don't know why they left out lumbar, right? But perhaps that is included in other variables. See? And these words written as an admonishment to someone else talking about having fun doing headstands, regardless of their naivety about where that came from and where it originally came in the mat sequence as a transition, but certainly not part of the mat, other than a transition. Rehashing some old things there. So number 2, read between the lines. And the lines, see, from the MMP point of view, the core has everything to do with alignment. And that's because the core is one point out of at least 2 that create tension, that makes alignment sensational. Because, see, when you create tension between 2 points, it gets straight. And it's in that straightness, the blessing and the gift of Pilates is that that's sensational. So standing up straight embraces an image that refers to oppositional rotation between axes, And when you're upside down, all the more important, because your load is heavier above you than below you. And Pilates is all about what? Being eccentric, away from center. Oh, and that takes me to, is that my next question here? Yes, yes. Let's go to number 3. Number 3. And here's my question. Do bones support muscles, or do muscles support bones? Do bones support muscles, or do muscles support bones? And sure, you could take the college answer and say, well, it's both. Okay? But that's not one of the options on the question. And I'm not saying there's an absolute to this, of course, but if you just consider evolution and the nature of our being, it would seem to me that the bones have evolved to support the muscular symphony. Why did I segue to that? Oh, because it's in this eccentric tension that you get between axes. It's in this stretching that you get between axes that gives you the alignment you're after in a tension that is not decompressive on the vertebra, not decompressive on the spine. Vertebrae, vertebra, plural, all of them, the spine in total, instead of taking compression like it's up to the cervical and the thoracic parts of the spine to just bear the load, and it's the alignment that they're in. Well, what alignment is that? How does the body find that alignment? And the great thing is that in finding the alignment, it takes tension, and the tension comes from oppositional rotation between axes, and that's what puts the spine in a decompression of tension. So maybe that was what was meant by other variables. So number four. Number four, where did that come from? I invite you to higher ground here, 4A and 4B. So all my broadcasts is my personal profession about a point of view of Pilates that I call the Michael Miller Pilates point of view. This Michael Miller trademark, that's the Michael Miller trademark, represents that brand, but stands alone for its own identification of core new tension within the human body. Okay. It's biomechanics. And so the two things, and my title was what? Oh, I invite you to higher ground. To me, higher ground, to survive the tsunami of Pilates passion and the friction of people defending what they know, it's just tense when people care about their connection to Pilates and what they can, and they, so if I were with this person or an instructor for this person, I would want to go from whatever the core means to them. See, people talk about that all the time. Core, and yet it's a presumed generality, as though undefinable. unknowable, and unattainable. As though you'll never go deep enough or good enough or have as much control as you ever possibly could, because you can't really explain what the core is and don't want to. Just from the MMP point of view, know that the last exercise in Pilates I've talked about before as being the inversion on the Cadillac, which is upside down but not standing on your head or doing handstands, but where's your supported endpoint of tension? I've got my arms up here like this. Where's your supported endpoint of tension? Well, you could say your wrists, right? But then they connect into the shoulders. So just like having your head in one of those horseshoe things that lets you do an inversion without having your head on the ground, but all of that is a blind attempt at doing something well that your understanding can achieve with much more authority and connection if so embraced, if so engaged, right? That's what took me back to our bones. The bones support muscles, or muscles support bones. See, it's the muscles themselves that create the symphony of tension in itself, and it uses the structure of the skeleton and everything else to facilitate the dynamic that it's reaching for. So how can you be ready to do headstands in a way if you can't maintain core new tension between your primary endpoints all the way out through, I think, the ankles first, to really get your hips together. And then if you really have endpoint connection at ankles and you want to be inverted and go to metatarsals, okay? But see, you know what you're giving away. And know that when you go to straight knees and pointed feet and the lack of establishing endpoints of tension, what you give up in terms of being aware sensationally of where you are in space and keeping throttled, meaning limited, the amount of uniform engagement your body is capable of. So when I say I invite you to higher ground, I invite you to be aware of core new tension as just biomechanical fact in biophysics and how the body moves through space. Okay? And make that leap with me first. And then the second thing, of course, the higher ground I offer you is a point of view, that's all it is a point of view that sees an ideal within Joe's original work. That is sensational, which means you can feel it. The point of view that's ideal in nature has a sensation as a definition. Because if complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit isn't an experience, then what is it? Is it only an intellectual, philosophical, unattainable, intellectual dingus? You know, the thing that's always sought after but never attainable? Pilates is so much more than that, right? Can be. And so I think that takes me to my next item. Can be. those two things, awareness of core new tension and uniform eccentric loading flowing through progressive patterns of movement, as the definition to MMP. And to the extent that whatever you're doing somehow resonates with that, I think everything resonates from Joe's mat work, Joe's message. I think Joe delivers a message. It's not like there's an unknowable thing that he expanded his influence on and it's still unknowable and all that. MMP thinks differently. There's essence to, there's message to the messenger. Both one defines the other, and the message is sensational. It's an experience that you can feel. Number 5 is sort of a leftover of number 5. When it comes to confidence, out of 6, so I've only got a little way to go more. Confidence. Well, I'll say, so my statement, you haven't heard. When it comes to confidence, you're left with no other choice. That's my statement about confidence. I'm not sure I have anything more to add than that. But when it comes to confidence, you know, where you can look back on your experience and find a source of confidence and that you've made it this far and you have this experience and that's what you that's what you will bring into play. The feedback I had for that though was, be confident in your ability to observe. So this is an MMP broadcast, right? And a very distinct interpretation of spirit as observing, as a present participle, present tense, ongoing, and being and thinking as present tense, ongoing processes, capacities that you as an instructor elicit out of your student. Ultimately, confidence is a choice, I think, regardless about your history or anything, because there's a good way to look at it. What's the opposite of confidence? Which you would say doubt, maybe, uncertainty, which when you start balancing those two things, you see that they're intellectual choices, like hope and fear, and that as such, are arbitrarily and inescapably chosen, period. Inescapably chosen. And that, reducing it to a choice, is that, well, confidence is a choice. Now, how you display it is another matter, right? And mostly for me, confidence, as I say, if you're observing what's going on, and you're aware of that, and you have practice at being diplomatic and polite in your interaction with other human beings, now see, I have no confidence in my ability to I shouldn't even finish that sentence, to endure for long or to suffer fools, right? It's tough to do that. And yet, as a Pilates instructor, it's easy as silk because know what you're about. There you go. So where do you get confidence from? I would say, as a Pilates instructor, you get confidence from knowing what you're about, knowing what your job is, having a sense of how you fit in, right? Regardless of how everybody else thinks you fit in, I think the confidence comes from at least you know how you fit in. And in knowing that, see, that gives you confidence in how you participate with your student, or your staff, or your school, or your business, or your union, or your insurance company. I know that's a company, but insurance companies seem to be at the top of that pyramid of group influence on a subject. Pick a subject, and in this case, it's about Pilates. So where are we? Number 6 is the last one, right? Number 6, geez. It's New Year's. This is the last day of the year. And so who says so? And why? I mean, New Year acknowledges what? Oh, here's my title. New Year's acknowledges what is happening. Meaning we're completing a cycle of a year. And that's what's happening. That's on this planet. We're going around that big bright thing in the sun. And it takes this long to complete a cycle. Right? That's what's happening. From the MMP point of view, Pilates is a reaction to what is happening. So there's reality, and there's our reaction to it. And Joseph Pilates, as a messenger, choreographed the mat work as a reaction to the reality that we find ourselves in. It will always be a poem of its own, immortal in its recitation all over the world. Just in the fact that Joe's book, whatever language, and, well, see, then we go into interpretations of what's not original, okay? And that brings us to MMP as a point of view, one of 10,000 points of view of Pilates. But this point of view is an ideal point of view. And the ideal point of view looks at the original work in Joe's book and recognizes its composition as a reaction to the reality that we find ourselves in. The biggest one being what? Gravity, right? Joe's gift, his choreography and his definition and his statement that contrology develops the body uniformly is what MMP consolidates or uses as the evidence. It's the evidence out of Joe's book that makes a reasoned argument about the nature of the work that has been my pleasure to share with you. And I hope I've done, I don't know, in embracing my passion to share it with you, I hope that somehow there's clarity in whatever portion of it you listen to. And then at the end of the year, what I would leave you with is that this and treatment. I entreat you. I encourage you to establish a routine. Establish a routine and meaning of and commit to a Pilates practice. So I'm trying to say that routine is important. You know, establish a routine and figure out what that is going to be, meaning plan how it's going to fit in for you into your life, and then commit to that routine. And then I had something else in that though. I'd like to commit to that routine. Yes. Oh, the title. The title. I didn't get the title right. The title was supposed to be First Pilates, then everything else. So I'll write that out on Facebook. First Pilates, then everything else. That goes along with establish a routine, you know, and commit to it, a practice of it, and make Pilates first, and then everything else comes after. It's not like it's part of something else. It's a poem you recite on its own. And you do it in whatever way you can, however you can, as best you can, in whatever way resonates with the original tune. But you seek to perform the original tune in pursuit of the experience. Because life can't live forever. Read between the lines. The sooner the better. See behind the curtain. Yours, mine, humanity's, a particular culture within that humanity, right? Add 2 and 2. But it's up to you to have enough confidence to ask for much more than you're willing to settle for to see what you can get. It's a negotiation when you add 2 and 2. Be eccentric in your effort in adding 2 and 2 as you would in establishing tension within your body. Direct your thinking. Geist